Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, I am Cryptic Coil, and in today's video, I am going to do a book review of Christopher Pike's Whisper of Death. For some reason, I went back and watched my Christopher Pike book collection video, and when I showcased this one, which I had read very recently at that time, I said that I would do a full-fledged review of this, and I do want to start doing more book reports. And the only book that I've actually reviewed on my channel is R.L. Stein's Fear Street, The New Girl, which was the first book in the Fear Street series. And so now I would like to do a review of Christopher Pike's Whisper of Death. And if you notice, I have this like a painting right next to me because I had it on that wall, and I woke up this morning and it was on the floor. The double-sided sticky tape had finally given out. I mean, this has been up there for like a number of years. I mean, it had never fallen before, so that was crazy. So I'm gonna have to deal with that when I'm done with this video. But let me get into this book report. And I'm going to issue a disclaimer first. Okay, so I saw somebody do a review of Killing Mr. Griffin once. I don't remember her name, but she did a really good job with that book review, and she made it to where half of the video she did not give any spoilers, and then the second half, so you could turn it off at that point, but then the second half of the video she did give spoilers, and so she gave her viewers that option. And I'm going to take a page from her book, no pun intended, and I'm going to give you guys that option as well. Give me a second. All right, so this is what the cover looks like. Okay, so there's I believe this book actually takes place in Arizona, and there's a young man and a young woman, Roxanne and Pepper. The boy, his name is Pepper, and the girl, her name is Roxanne. And there's a witch in a cloak, and they're on the side of the road. Now, this cover, like, once you've read the story, the cover is, like, even more eerie. So let me read you the tagline. So the title is Whisper of Death, and the tagline reads, "They returned home to a dead world." And I'll go ahead and read the summary for you on back. All the people had vanished. Roxanne and Pepper are a teenage couple with problems. They leave their small town for a weekend to try and solve them. They don't really succeed, and when they return home, they find their town empty. They call other towns. They find the whole world empty. But eventually, they discover 3 other kids their age who are still alive in the town. They cannot imagine why the 5 of them seem to be the only ones left of the entire human race. They have only one thing in common. They were each directly or indirectly involved in the death of Betty Sue, the plain shy girl who committed suicide only a short time ago. Betty Sue, the quiet, brilliant girl who wrote short stories about each of them. Stories of hate, of revenge, of death in a dead world. It makes them wonder who Betty Sue really was, or what Betty Sue was. Okay, so that's the summary that you can find on the back of the book. I'm looking to see what year this came out. I want to say it was 91. Yep, 1991. Okay. So in this book, ultimately what it's about is Roxanne and Pepper. They're in high school. They're a couple. They slept together, and Roxanne got pregnant. And Roxanne ultimately made the decision, and this is early on in the book. I mean, this is like the first couple chapters. Roxanne ultimately decides to go to an abortion clinic, and because her and Pepper are not ready to have a child, and it's actually a painful decision for both of them. And in contemplating this abortion, Roxanne is really torn. She understands she understands the pro-life side of the argument. She understands the pro-choice side of the argument. And Christopher Pike does not tell us. He does not tell the readers how to feel about it one way or the other. But Roxanne acknowledges that both sides are actually worthy of criticism. And so she ultimately decides to go through with it. And so she tells Pepper, so they drive down to the abortion clinic. They live in a small town. I think they went to the next city over that had the abortion clinic. And they stop for gas on the way there. And so they stop for gas on the way there, and they deal with the gas station attendant and everything. Then they go to the next town over, and Roxanne, it's her turn to be seen, and so she's laying there. They have her legs up in some mechanism, and the doctor has to leave for a moment, and in that moment, Roxanne decides that ultimately she cannot go through with this decision. So she instead gets up off the table, and she leaves. And if I remember correctly, she actually lied to Pepper and told him that she had gone through with it. She decided not to go through with it. I don't remember exactly why she had to change a heart on the table, but she did. And then they get in the car and they drive back to their town. And they stop by the gas station again. I forgot what for, but there was no one there. And it was unlocked. They could have taken the money out of the register. I mean, it was crazy. But they don't think anything of it. Then they get back to their respective homes, and they wake up in the morning, and she decides to make a phone call, but there's no dial tone. Then they turn on the TV, and there's nothing is being broadcasted. So they leave their homes, and they go out to the town square, and they find 3 other kids that they go to school with. And then they start reminiscing about a girl that they went to school with named Betty Sue, who had died. She died by self-immolation. She lit herself on fire, and she was burnt to a crisp. I think it was in the parking lot at that gas station. They seem to be the only people left in the world, and so they go around town searching for clues as to what happened. Everything seems to link back to Betty Sue, so they go to Betty Sue's house, and they look for clues. Then they realize that so this movie is kind of like a Groundhog Day, where it's basically the same thing, and that's where I'm gonna go ahead and end it. As far as non-spoilers, so that's the plot of the book. There is one more thing I'd actually like to point out. There's actually an Easter egg in here. When Roxanne and Pepper go on their first date, they go to the movies and they watch a movie called The Season of Passage. So I thought that was really cool. It was a nice Easter egg. But yeah, that's where I'm going to end it as far as spoilers go. So if you're not interested in the spoilers, you can go ahead and turn the video off now. And for those of you who are interested in sticking around and checking the spoilers out, I'll go ahead and get into that. But before I do, ultimately, I want to say that I would rate this book a 4 out of 5, and the reason why I don't give it a 5 is because there was some ambiguity, something wasn't explained, something that I wanted the answers to, and yeah, I mean, that's about it. All right. So let's get into the spoilers. So, like I said, they go to Betty Sue's house, and they find a notebook, and it turns out that she was quite the writer. She wrote short little stories about each of the characters. So there was another girl, and I don't remember what her involvement was with Betty Sue, but she ended up getting killed, and then there was a guy, there was another guy other than Pepper, and he was kind of like the bad boy. Think of like John from the Breakfast Club. Yeah, he was just kind of the kid from the wrong side of the tracks, not afraid of getting into trouble. Well, it turns out that he had violated Betty Sue. Yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about. And so she wrote a short story about him, and he ended up getting shot. They had gotten a hold of guns, and they went down to the high school that they attended, and of course the high school was empty. There was no one there, and he had gotten shot by mistake, and that was kind of prophesied by the story that Betty Sue had written about him. And then there was also kind of a nerdy character that was like highly intelligent and knew something about everything, and he had died as well. I think that he like fell through a window and got impaled by shards of glass or something, if I remember correctly. And then there was like a pretty popular girl. She died too. And all of their deaths were like kind of prophesied by the short stories that they found in Betty Sue's diary. So as this goes on, they catch on to the fact that she's a witch. And so this is Roxanne and Pepper on their way either out of town to go to the abortion clinic or on their way back into town. Based on the end of the book, I would say that they're on their way back into town. Oh, and that was another thing. On their way back into town from the abortion clinic, Roxanne actually sees somebody. Betty Sue was supposed to have red hair, and she sees someone who looks like Betty Sue in a black robe on the side of the road. And that's how we find out that Betty Sue had died by immolation. So, so Betty Sue is supposed to be dead. Well, what ended up happening? Okay, so at the end of the day, only Roxanne and Pepper are left. Everyone else in the story had died, and everyone else in the world had disappeared. And they go back to Pepper's house, and he actually had a barn, and so the first time that they ever like did it, it was like on top of like some like stacks of hay in the barn, and what's her name? Roxanne finds out that Pepper had actually slept with Betty Sue, And so she got really mad, and she started to yell at Pepper, and she pushed him, and he fell down on what are those? He fell down on a pitchfork, and he died. And so she had killed him, and she was the last one, and then she ended up having like a really vague confrontation with Betty Sue, and then all of a sudden, oh, and then here's the other thing: the bad boy that got shot. How I told you that he violated her. He violated Betty Sue. Well, he only did it because she had magical powers, and she used her magic to make him do that to her, and then she sought revenge on the whole group for some reason. And yeah, so that was another reason why I don't give the story a 5, because that's, to me, kind of a plot hole. Well, then all of a sudden, Roxanne gets transported back to the abortion clinic, and it turns out that she never got off the table. She actually went through with the abortion. Something went wrong, and she died. She bled out or something, and she was doomed to spend eternity in a time loop where every day she wakes up thinking that she's gonna go through with the abortion, changes her mind. Her and Pepper go back into town. They find the world empty. They go into the town square. They find those other kids from school. And then they go around town looking for clues and find themselves at Betty Sue's house and read her short story. And then throughout the day, they all die one by one, except for Roxanne, who has that confrontation, that vague confrontation with Betty Sue. She's doomed to repeat this every day for like eternity. And then when she dies in the abortion clinic, they go out and tell Pepper, and so he's like, well, I guess there's nothing I can do, so he just goes back home. And on the way home, he sees a hitchhiker in a black robe with red hair. So, I mean, it was fun to read. I mean, it was fun to get to know these characters. It was fun to start to figure out that Betty Sue was a witch and that she was in control of everything. But the ambiguity, it just, I don't like that. I don't. I want things to add up, you know? And so I can't give it you know what? I'm gonna knock it down a peg. No, because it was still such a good read that I couldn't put the book down. So I was gonna knock it down to 3.5 stars, but now I'm gonna leave it at 4, because despite the ambiguity, it was like, it was just enticing. I mean, I couldn't put it down, and I mean this book is like still like pretty fresh in my mind. But it did bother me that Betty Sue's powers weren't explained. It's like, where did she get those powers? Why did she have those powers? That wasn't explained. I didn't like that plot hole about the bad boy violating Betty Sue, but only because she used her magical powers to make him do it. I don't like that. It's like, okay, fine. If he's going to do something like that for the sake of fiction, fine. But that the fact that the victim made him do it, I mean, nah, I mean, that's whack. Then Roxanne, she didn't really do anything wrong. I feel absolutely horrible for her. And Pepper, I mean, same thing. I mean, I actually feel horrible for all of them. Betty Sue was like, Betty Sue isn't really a true victim. she's like a victim because she made herself a victim, and ultimately she's the villain of the story because she just ruined everybody's life for like no good reason, or at least the reason wasn't explained to us. And it's that type of ambiguity that I don't like. And the older I get, I mean, I still love Christopher Pike, and I would still say that he's my favorite author of all time. But I've been reading him for a very long time, and I have not read all of his work. And every time I go to start a new Christopher Pike novel that I haven't read before, I'm just going to be worried about that frustration from amb- getting ambiguity at the end of a book. Um, so I'm just gonna leave it there. They did have they did turn the Midnight Club into a series on Netflix. I did watch it back in October when it was released, and it was like really, really, really good. They did a great job. I'll talk about that in my next video. Okay. I'll go ahead and end this one here, but let me know what you think. And how did I do? How was my book report? Give me a grade. All right, A, B, C, D, or F. Okay. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Horns up. Peace out.